In my college days, when we were learning OOP, object oriented programming, I was finding this concept very, very difficult and complicated. And I was asking my teacher, ma'am, what is this object all about? Because for me, object is the thing that I see all around me. Why this object oriented programming? I was not getting the concept. And she tried in ways to explain me the concept because she was a very dedicated teacher. She wanted me to understand this concept. And she said, I will not proceed to the other sections unless you get the basics, because this is very, very important. Why object oriented programming is different from procedural oriented programming, and why programming languages like Fortran and Pascal, they are different from C++ and Java and Python. So I was getting nothing. Why this operator overloading and friend function and inheritance? So finally, man came with one very interesting example, which I still remember. And that made me understand what is the fundamental difference. She said that when you are driving your bike, uh, when you see the red signal in the traffic signal, when you see the red color, automatically you stop your vehicle. And when you see the green signal, it gives you a go ahead that now you can drive. So this is actually a process. It's a kind of procedure that you are following. So your action of the object is being governed by a certain procedure, a process. Now imagine a scenario, a hypothetical scenario where the focus is not on the procedure, but the focus is on the object. So if you have a dedicated, if we would have a dedicated lane for two-wheelers and four-wheelers and LMV trucks, that would have been object-oriented programming, object-oriented approach. I understood it, what pretty much she wanted to say. But in the hindsight, when I remember that example, I think the same approach is applicable when it comes to the traffic chaos. Today, just like in computers, procedural approach became obsolete beyond a point, and so we needed object-oriented approach. C++, Java, C Sharp, these languages came. Today, I think likewise, today the procedural approach is now exhausted when it comes to traffic, managing the traffic. Today, we need an object-oriented approach. So the focus has to be on the object, on the human beings, and not on the processes anymore. And like green and red and yellow, these signals, they don't work anymore. They are not capable of handling today's traffic chaos. So what are the solutions? This is a problem. Well, but what is the solution? The only way to reduce traffic load is that either you go underground or you go above the head. So either the entire world starts driving underground. This could reduce the load on the road traffic, or you have to fly. So if we all start driving underground, the problem is this, that it will sort of create a trembling catastrophe, because we are not sure of how the crust, mantle and core beneath the earth's surface, they will react, how the molten magma will respond to our this atrocious attempt. And it's really scary to even think of the fact that the entire human population all around the globe, they start driving underground, which means we have only one option left, which is to fly in the sky. So there are pros and cons in both the theories. Should we have air taxis or should we not have air taxis? In this question, I don't have a sure short answer, because this is one of the few predictions where I have failed. 10, 12 years back, most of the predictions that I used to make with my friends, they have come true. From Uber and these, there were many things I used to jokingly tell my friends. And one of the predictions that has not come true is this. I had said that in the next 10 years, we all will have flying cars. But it's 2022 and we don't still have flying cars. But I still have the audacity to say that by 2030, we will all be having flying cars and air taxis. In fact, so many companies are working on it already. They were supposed to deliver this by 2020, but something drastically different happened in 2020. We all know that. We don't want to remember 2020 and 2021. So, what are the pros and cons here? Because if you ask a common person about this concept of flying taxi, they will raise a few apprehensions like this, that it will create typically too much of a noise, because whenever a flying aircraft or a flying plane walks above our head these days, there's a very, very disturbing, irritating noise. So what about the decibels? This is one point. Another point is, what about the emissions? And yet another point is the risk of accidents in the worst case, which will be a really a dooming catastrophe. So people who talk about the solutions, they say that uh, we will not be starting with combustible engines. We will be straight away going with batteries. But today's lithium-ion batteries have their own limitations, because they are very heavy, and there's a charging problem, and they discharge. So there are typically too many problems with the current set of batteries that we have. That is again a challenge in the long run. That another challenge we have, just like we are going to see with EV as well, electric vehicles, is a dumping problem. That is a different problem. That's a long-term thing. But there are typically too many problems with the current set of the batteries that are available. R&D is going on at different centers. But if you talk about the other aspects, like these all these flying cars and airplanes, they will be using VTOL concept. VTOL has become a very popular acronym. It means virtual takeoff and landing. So this VTOL idea is something where the design has to combine a hybrid approach of helicopters and flying planes, because helicopters have blades, which means the lift is not that significantly high as compared to the planes, because planes have wings, so it gives significantly high lift. And which means that it is more energy efficient as compared to the helicopters. But while planes are more energy efficient as compared to the helicopters, but they need runway. Helicopters don't use runways. They can manage with VTOL, virtual takeoff. So this is why we have to combine, and companies are combining a hybrid approach of helicopters and flying planes. So another problem, if you talk about from a common person's perspective, another problem is this: we have subways in different parts of the world, but they are not connected directly to our homes. They are not a door-to-door service providers. They have their metro stations, subway stations in different places. And in most cases, unless you are lucky to have your home nearer to these stations, you still have to manage to commute and travel to these places. So this is something which again have to be taken into consideration, how pocket friendly it is, because initially it is going to be primarily being used by the elites. Uber has said in its 2016 white paper, a very famous white paper Uber released, and they said that it risks this flying cars, it risks being hijacked by the elites. Uh, so being the cottage industry of the elites, not unlike Lamborghini. So this is another problem, but I don't see uh, anything too much of a problem in this, because this will anyway happen. Whether you like it or not, there is going to be a trickle down economics when flying cars come. I think this will be something like smartphones. When smartphones came, first they were being used by the rich elites, and after that, it started trickling down. And today, everyone, literally everyone in the world, they have one smartphone. Depending on the kind of features they would like to use, for that they have to spend money. So depending on their purchasing power, they have smartphones. But everyone has, pretty much everyone has smartphones these days. And likewise, we will see this first being used by the elites, what Uber is saying, and after that, it will slowly come back and get democratized to all the masses. Again, now there is a factor of accidents in the worst case, technical slacks. If it happens, it will be a real catastrophe. So what can we do about it? Because the noise thing can be taken care of by EVs, because if by the batteries, I'm sorry. So when we are using batteries, noise problem is at least taken care of, and the emission factor is taken care of for now. So when we are talking about these challenges of technical difficulties, and potential accidents in the worst case, the solution is this: that we will have to use trained pilots, because today's fighter planes, or fighter aircraft or commercial planes, they both use very trained pilots all around the world. But when we are going to use e-planes and flying cars at a massive scale, how many pilots we are going to use? This is another challenge. But Uber is saying, because in its white paper, Uber also said that in the beginning, only trained pilots will be operating these flying cars, but there onwards, it will go autonomous, which means that eventually people will not require any pilot to drive their flying cars. So if this happens, still we are going to face the challenge of our ATC protocols, because today's ATC protocols and set of rules were being designed for yesterday's planes, commercial planes. So we need a drastic upgrade to all those rules and protocols, and these are some of the problems. But if you talk about the other side, which I'm saying, that we need to reduce load on the road traffic, and we cannot go underground. We can only go above our head, which is like walk on the road and fly on the sky. So because this procedure oriented approach is not working on road traffic anymore because of the classical Malthusian problem. So we can only go take the sky route, and the best way to take the sky route, mitigating the problems to the extent we can, is to for private is only possible when private parties and government authorities, they work together. They have to work together, because if you talk about the ATC protocols that I'm saying, if you talk about the battery problem, if you talk about the pilots, and letting these commercial operators go through a stringent, rigorous check, all these are going to be the responsibilities of regulating authorities. But this is something we cannot do away with now. We cannot run away with these problems anymore. There is a problem. For whatever mistakes we did in past, we need to solve the road traffic problem. The only way left, as I say it, is to pilot, is to give it a try for flying airplanes. And as many as 20 companies are working on it, maybe by next year they will be making a human trial as well. Let's see, let's wait and watch, because if you are watching this video in 2030, you might be thinking I'm stupid, because in 2030 we are already seeing flying planes and flying cars, air taxis all around. So why is this person even talking about this when we have flying cars all around in 2030? But I want to tell you that I'm sounding stupid in 2030 because I'm making this video in 2022. And in 2022, we are still not sure about the feasibility of flying cars and air taxis. We are at a very interesting or uninteresting crossroads. What to do next? I think the entire human population has to critically analyze this issue and give their feedback. Stay connected with all these private companies and the regulating authorities now, and not once they start making their operations, start making their final trials. Because once they have plants, once you have plant and factories for something, after that it's very difficult commercially, it's commercially unviable to roll back a project. But today, if you and I have any problem, any issue, we need to raise this with companies, write articles, create videos, make it viral, make them viral. Let these content Let your limitations or your proposed limitations on this issue or your apprehensions reach these companies. Because once the pilot reaches a final stage, there onwards it's going to be a point of no return. This is why this is something I practically I personally practice as well, and this is something I would urge everyone to practice. Because when I came to know that there are companies in Europe who are taking plastics and converting them into pyrolysis oil, I wrote them my reservation on the issue, because I know once this becomes mainstream, then from there onwards it's very difficult to disband these factories on operations and a commercial angle comes. So if you are looking for a no plastic future, you have to stop such plants before they become operational and online. Likewise, I am saying every one of us, whosoever has any opinion on this issue, they need to voice their opinions now. Don't do this. Once this starts getting operational and the pilot reaches the final trial, no, there's an economic angle, there's a commercial angle that comes into the picture, and you don't expect companies to be that foolish that they will now roll back their projects. Do it now. I raised three concerns, which is this. Number one is the battery issue, the current limitation of the lithium ion batteries which we have. Number two is the noise issue, and the technical snacks. Number three is the availability of the pilots. And number four as well, which is the ATC upgrade in the protocols. So these are some things we need to discuss and debate on now. So this is why while there are pros and cons to this theory of air taxis and flying cars, I think, considering all the pros and cons, if you want to take one step forward, the only step is to take the sky route now. We I think it deserves to be given a trial, and because after all, the problem that we have on the road is humongous. It's huge. Today we cannot walk on the road. Your toddler, your infant kid, they cannot walk on the road. Your elderly, your senior citizens, they cannot cross the road from one side of the road to the another side. It takes them 30 minutes, and nobody is willing to stop. Everyone is actually suffering from their own economy of time paralysis. So I think to make the road viable for our kids, for our elderly, for the differently able, I think we need to create a scenario where we can walk on the road and we can fly in the sky if we need to, but we have to walk on the road. There are so many challenges on the downs on the other sides. I know this, but for those challenges we need to discuss and come together on a agreeable plan. And for that, the private companies and the government authorities, they need to work together. But eventually it will happen. You cannot stop this now. And I think by 2030, if you are watching this video, you might be even thinking I'm stupid, because by 2030 you are seeing flying cars and air taxis all around you, and this is something in 2022. I still think this is now unavoidable. Now let's see and wait and watch out what turns out in the future.